Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and we got Rich in the house, Esper Genesis, Guild Adept. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. You're coming to us from what, the sunny state of Florida?
Yep, South Florida, where the humidity is something high.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it finally just cooled down here. We had like in New Jersey, we had a bit of a heat wave. I'm dying. I'm like ready to turn on the air conditioner already, but I'm like, it's not June yet. Damn it! I refuse to put on the air conditioner. But then like we got a rainstorm, and now it's like 20 degrees cooler. It's nuts.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So you're coming on to talk about you guys are releasing just Esper Genesis. You guys had a very successful Kickstarter, and now you guys get to make the thing. And I believe you said Origins is when people will actually be able to buy the hardback book.
Yep. Yeah, the first part of the thing was the core manual, which we actually got to put out on Drive Through RPG about a few weeks ago, and it's been doing pretty great. We sent out the hardcovers for print a couple weeks back, and they should be waiting for us at Origins when we get there. Uh, I know a lot of people are looking forward to it. We want to show it off to as many people as possible because it looks amazing, and I'm really excited about it.
Now I know we had you on before, and you've worked on something, but is this the biggest project you've done?
Uh, yes. as far as as far as putting together a like a standalone uh fifth edition game, yeah, this is a lot of work that I've done. I haven't done it solo. I have like a pretty cool team, but I'm doing the majority of the writing. So it's the core manual alone is a 304-page book, and we have two other books that we'll be cranking out over the fall, over the summer or the fall, which are also somewhere close to about that size. So yeah, this is pretty huge for me.
Oh, that's a lot, man. That's almost 1,000 pages. One right after another. Nice.
It's a big project. It's a big project, but we had we released the basic rules last year, and we kind of built like a foundation around what Esper Genesis was going to be. So building out from there has been it's been nothing but fun.
Michael Francis, thanks for the super chat. Greatly appreciate it. So, what are the other books? Can you talk about them?
Sure. Yeah, the next one that we're putting out is the threats database. It is a huge collection of the sci-fi threats of the galaxy. There's going to be different. There are some previews of some of them in the basic rules, and they're mentioned in the core manual. But there are beasts like the Velbast who are are part organic, part robot, and they're all self-involving with a universal AI structure. There are the Kanasi who are sort of Esper hunters in a sense that feed off of their energy. There's a bunch of different types of beasts that are unique to the galaxy, and we're also going to introduce in that book different types of environmental hazards in space, like things that you wouldn't find in a fantasy game. So space hazards, environmental hazards, planetary hazards, and enemy spaceships as well, or the enemy types for certain spaceships.
So, with Esper Genesis and being space and sci-fi, how much do you go into that third pillar of D&D, the exploration?
A lot, actually. It calls for it because there's so much of a difference between being on one world where everything kind of has its standards, and exploring space where a planet can be anything. So we've been trying to provide some free GM rules on how to quickly generate a planet and how to quickly generate an environment. A lot of that is going to be showing up en masse in the Master Technician's Guide, which is the last book that we're going to be coming out with. lot of the optional rules for GMs, as well as advanced rules on different types of environmental gear, survival, different things that can happen on different planets, different types of races that you meet that aren't amongst the major races. So that's what that's there for. We wanted to. The core manual is sort of like that player's handbook, where everybody can open it up and say, hey, this is 5th edition, and we know how to play this, and everybody can make something out of it. The threats of the threats. The technician's guide is where it branches off completely from the fantasy side, and takes things into everything with sci-fi.
So you said you have a team working on this. How big of a team do you got going on?
Well, we have the primary is myself, our producer Eric Weiner, who handles the majority of the business aspects and the book printing. He's also going to be overseeing most of the organized play that we're kickstarting at Origins. Well, not kickstarting, we're kicking it off at Origins, I should say. It's called the Crucible Core. That's a T-shirt I'm wearing, and he's going to be doing that. Brian is one of our he's our lead graphic designer. He does the majority of the design of the layout for all the books. He's also one of the adventure writers. The three of us make up Alligator Alley Entertainment overall. We also have a few more people, notably one Christopher Negland, who also had joined the team specifically for Esper Genesis, and he does a lot of the adventure writing. He throws ideas back and forth, and he's kind of part of the world generation as is. For the core manual so far, I've been trying to get story writers to come in. Our first was Will Doyle, who was also one of the D&D Guild Adepts. Will is a really cool guy. He and I have worked on a couple of projects already, and looking forward to working with him some more. And you'll be hearing about some more. I just haven't really been able to announce them yet.
Okay, cool. Tea Time with Toby says this looks very interesting. I'm downloading the free rules to read over. Thank you for making that an option.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We wanted everybody to take a look, because the first question that we got, because we were talking to people at Gamma about it, and what's really funny is I'll say, yeah, it's sci-fi for 5th edition, and every single person, one of their first questions is, oh yeah, sure, but exactly how 5e is it?
Now they can download and see.
Suspicion, they don't believe me, and I'm like, no, seriously, it's fully compatible. You can whip out the player's handbook and throw anything you want in there, and it works. And
now just envision people giving you that sly eye. How compatible is it?
How compatible is it? Yeah, it is just about 100%. Integrated with the 5e core. So that we put out the basic rules first, so that everybody can just kind of look at the basic, classes. And we even wrote the basic rules with the 4 classes and the races, with some similarities to the player's handbook, in that vein. Obviously, the core manual expands everything out to its own setting, but we wrote that book so everybody can look at it and go, oh, okay, I see what I can do with this. And and move forward from there. The rules there are they're basic. That's what they're for.
Was it difficult or challenging to mold the 5e system and mechanics to the campaign setting you wanted to put out?
Yes and no. The original framework for Esper Genesis was not that at all. Actually, it was just I created a list of sci-fi gear and weapons and armor and stuff that you can use in 5e, which was, the system itself makes that really easy to do. The DM's guide in particular for D&D makes it, they give you a whole truckload of ideas on things you can do, ways you can manipulate things. 5e is a very malleable system. Once I started building a setting around it, however, the fantasy has its own thing. Sci-fi is a different beast. It has a million different tropes, and so you have to establish something for a core. And once I started doing that, that's when I had to kind of work around how to create rules for things, like the way starships work, the way the powers work, the way all of these things work, without taking away from 5e. That was our big goal. Our big goal is, everyone likes 5e, everyone likes the way 5e works. I don't want to take anything away from that people already enjoy, but want to add something that makes people go, oh, like this is something completely different.
I ask because I have a friend who just like hates generic systems and feels that like the system should always be adapted to a campaign setting, and like that's the cool part of it. So like you need rules to support that campaign setting.
Right. He's kind of right in a sense. I do like universal systems sometimes, I guess, depending on what I'm doing. Like the Genesis system, to name one that I recently saw, was like, okay, this is interesting. I kind of see what you could do with this, and and where it comes from. But yeah, it does have, it creates limits with its limitations, with its
vastness.
With its vastness. Yeah. So when we did Esper Genesis, we wanted to keep 5e entirely as as the system, but mechanics needed to be built around it. So some of the skills needed to be changed. I needed rules for how things worked in 0G. I needed rules for what the difference was between energy regular weapons, burst fire weapons, how that whole thing works, how grenades work. And then the big one was which was starships. That was one where we decided that we wanted to have a starship combat system and a space combat system and vehicle combat, but not change it from 5e combat. So it's kind of keeping it universal, but not exactly. It just uses phrases and terms that everybody understands.
I know even when we've played modern using 5e, like they did an Unearthed Arcana kind of hack to it, plus whatever rules are in the DMG.
Yep.
So we had played around with it a little bit, and my brother had tried out the Warlock Pact for it, but eventually he ended up with grenades and an AK-47, and he's like there was no longer a point to use spells.
Yeah. If you take the tech a little too far, where it starts replacing the powers, then that was a little bit of a challenge too. We wanted to, when we did the classes and we started adapting stuff from fantasy classes into the sci-fi classes, we wanted to make it so that all of the class features were viable with the gear. So the most of the abilities are the same, but there are certain things like the Cybermancer, for example, that has their own powers, like Black Hat. I'm able to use my powers to hack myself into a security system, or certain powers that were added onto the list to give the classes a leg up versus a normal person with a hacking tool or a gun.
Brian Smith wants to know, what aspect of gameplay do you think this system has improved on from 5e?
I would actually, oddly enough, I'm gonna go with exploration in a sense. At first, I didn't even think so. One thing that actually I'm gonna say two things. I'm gonna say exploration and a phase of combat. A lot of people don't realize that 5e 5e deals with a lot of melee, a whole lot of melee, and that range combat and spells. They take a different task, but range combat and melee combat, in effect, they're pretty much the same. In 5e, everyone thought that a sci-fi version would just be, oh, it's D&D with guns. Everyone's just gonna have a gun and shoot at distance. No, we put in a couple of things to make melee make sense with ranged. like realistic things. What happens when there's a guy in your face with a gun? What type of gun is it? Does it have this kind of particular ability where you can fight with it, effectively? What happens when you miss with a grenade? What happens when things like that. Now from the exploration side, and this was actually said to me, I didn't even really see it. We created brand new races, and we did that because obviously all of the D&D races are fantasy focused, and we just didn't want to do space carve-outs of those because I feel I'm a very big sci-fi fan. I feel it's a little disingenuous to the whole thing. So we created all new races, and we created the races, we created the backgrounds, and we set up how they fit into the galaxy. And the live stream, when it was airing, Kat Rama was actually talking about the different races, and she was discussing how the races seem to identify with themselves versus each other, because it's a galaxy of aliens. They don't all live on the same planet, and the social interaction and how that enhances role play, and how that in itself creates interesting dynamics when you're doing exploration. Even I looked at it and I was like, oh wow, that's actually pretty cool.
One of the people we kind of interact with a lot is DVJ over on YouTube, and that's like his thing when it comes to D&D is like honing in on the exploration and making up rules to almost make those exploration encounters almost like monsters, and so they play out a little bit like combat encounters.
Yep.
Yeah, because of the three pillars in D&D style games, that one seems to be the weakest. People naturally will role play and do social interaction, and it's D&D. So there isn't much you have to do to make combat happen.
True for the most part. The exploration for the exploration, I guess it depends on where you are in the galaxy. What I think is a lot of so the different races have different aspects of themselves that are useful for different areas of where they find themselves in exploration. So the adventures that we're writing, there are going to be a lot of environmental hazards, and they'll all be handled differently depending on what type of race or class or combination that you have. That I think is going to be a lot of fun, because in fantasy it's kind of like oh, I run into this. It can only be like a certain type of something or something magical, where on a alien planet in the middle of the galaxy, you don't know what you're going to run into, and you don't even know what it would look like. So that's going to be more adventure side. On the player side, actually, is another question I guess I can answer. Another thing that we sort of improved on as far as social interaction as well was what we do in Starship Combat. In Starship Combat, the crew works as a group, which it loses focus in D&D combat, because D&D combat is just like, okay, when it's my turn, I do something, and then the next person does something. Starship Combat, everybody gets together, and they're like, okay, what's our strategy for this turn? And they discuss, and they go back and forth, and the social interaction happens while the combat is happening.
So basically it's us and them when it comes to your turn. So you guys decide together, this is what we're doing.
Right, and everybody has their role. So it's the pilot is like, well, like we're in the middle of this mess. I'm gonna do this maneuver, and because the pilot's doing that maneuver, the gunner's like, okay, we're gonna take care of this ship by doing this, and the technician's like, all right, if you're gonna do that, then I'm gonna do this, and when you're working together in that vein, it creates that whole like real party camaraderie that you don't get in most conflicts.
Now, when you're writing for Esper Genesis and coming up with ideas and maybe even planning adventures, do you think more like Star Wars or Star Trek? Or something else?
That's tough. I borrowed from both, but I'm thinking, so space combat in itself, we wanted it to be like 5e combat. We wanted it to be fast-paced. We wanted it to be easy, and not too many mechanical rules. All of that optional stuff we were saving for the technician's guide. So I guess we were pushing more towards Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica kind of thing. The ships themselves, we wanted to do more tactical ships, I guess, in a sense, instead of like all being super grand vessels. So a very Mass Effect kind of thing, combined with the Star Wars combat element, because that's what we were shooting for.
Is the premise for the group, are they like in a spaceship, or are they, something different? I know, like when we played our Star Wars campaign, our first go around with that, like we had a ship, and I forget the name of the freighter that's actually the Millennium Falcon, but it was the same thing, and we named it the Star Kraken. But after a while, like it started taking on its like own personality and becoming like another player in the game.
Yeah, well, that is actually the best way to handle ships. Ships are not the focal point of Esper Genesis at all. Actually, it's really more about the characters. The environment can change dynamically to whatever you want. You can have an entire campaign, underground in the underlevels of a city, or you can have a full-fledged, space exploration campaign on a ship. If you want, we tailored it so you can do either or. We didn't make starships, mandatory, which is why even piloting one is actually like a tool proficiency versus a skill that any character would have. What was I going to say? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what you were going to say.
I am very long-winded. My brain just does all this stuff.
There's no worries. I totally get that. Brian Smith wanted to know about what's the role of gods and humans.
There are no gods per se, other than the theories people have about the Crucibles that are there. So I guess I should describe the setting, which would be
we can do that. Absolutely.
So in our galaxy, you have these ancient artifact machines that are sort of like small moons, and they're called the Crucibles. The Crucibles generate an infinite amount of energy that various races had actually discovered them once they had activated and started harnessing the power out of them, and quickly advanced through technologically through various stages, enabling them space exploration, not having to harvest resources to power their, to power cities or to power anything. A lot of technological advancements happen for all of these races. After some time, regular people from various alien races started to attune to the energy that was coming out of these crucibles, and they started exhibiting their own abilities, their control of light, control of gravity, starting able to do things with their mind, and the effect of doing that is, or should I say, the once you reach that stage, you've accomplished what's called Esper Genesis, and you become an Esper. That's what the galaxy is named of anyway. So each of the actual, at some point in time, each of the actual players or player characters in the game go through the origin of where they are awakened as an Esper, either immediately or somewhere down the road.
Catharsis. So, is there a free preview or basic rules set out only on Drive Through RPG? That's where you would find it, correct?
That's where you'd find it. Yeah, you'd find both the basic rules and the core manual there.
So you check it out and then decide if that's something you want to do. How with Crucible Corps, how difficult has that been getting to get organized play going for being a small publisher? I imagine that's going to be a huge challenge.
It is. We had so we've been trying to advertise it for the past year. We did a couple of Crucible core games at Gamehole Con last year. At Gen Con, at Winter Fantasy, sort of like intro mods to get people into it. But getting the word out on an organized play for a game that already isn't mainstream is it's a little difficult. It's I'm not gonna lie. It's a bit difficult, but we have people looking at it. We have people signed up for it at Origins. If anybody wants to come in and play, I have a couple of people that I work with on that other starting game that will remain nameless that may be attending one or two of my sessions. Yeah, absolutely. It's very nice. It's very nice to have friends in the industry. That I will say. So I'm working with the Guild Adepts and working with people that do work for WotC. They give me a lot of information and they help me, and working with Adventurers League stuff has made that a lot easier.
The community is a great place to be right now. I'm gonna have to check you out at Origins and try and jump in on a game.
Sure, absolutely.
For sure, check it out.
I'll be there. All four of us will be there running games.
Nice. So have you shopped around to any game stores, comic book stores, that kind of thing, with the idea of organized play?
Not yet. When we did the KickStarter, we had a retailer backer level, and what we did with them was we had promised them that they would be able to get our books and market them, for about a month and introduce our organized play in their area first. And then once that's done, then once the book goes into distribution, we'll be sending out notifications to stores in regards to OP and OP Adventures.
Then you can start swarming the game stores.
Yep.
Nice. So what is the biggest bads or threats in Esper Genesis?
Well, I named two of them before, the Velbast and the Kanasi. Another one is the Zamarian, because everyone has to have a space insectoid race.
It kind of goes without saying. They're always weird.
It kind of goes without saying.
Weird and super alien.
Exactly. And absolutely, completely militant, and they just take and kill and move on. Let's see, there are drakes, so they're not quite exactly the dragons. They're far more elemental oriented, and some of them even travel through space. There are creatures made of dark energy. There's two different types of those, and those creatures actually work directly with the two big bads. One of which is the Lorendi. So one of the races had actually split once their powers had awakened and they evolved differently. And the Lorendi Imperium decided that if you wanted to throw God into it, that their God had given them these powers to take over the galaxy and rule, under their thumb. So they're actually one of the huge bads. The other one is the Shadow Technocracy. So a lot of people have been asking me about them. The Shadow Technocracy is a secret society of, let's just say, they're beings that are mostly can't be recognized. If you're near a Shadow Technocrat, you won't notice. You won't know it. They reside in invisible space stations. They're cloaked, and their primary belief is that technology is the way forward in the universe, and that they are planning to evolve the galactic society in their own way.
Sounds a little Illuminati-ish.
Yeah,
Excellent. Brian Smith has a really good question. He'd love to hear about some of the infamous characters in this setting. So, who's your Picard? Who's your Darth Vader? Who's your Luke Skywalker?
We don't have one exactly. We have characters that we created kind of like iconics for representations of different classes. But we did that in the vein of when we had first written the starter adventure, Eos Keldor, we created pre-gens that sort of fit the narrative of the storyline, and those actually became iconic characters in the story. So you have your Promethean specialist who's Lucine Dapperall, and you have your human warrior who's Lincoln Garvey, and you'll see the characters in a lot of the short stories that pop up in the core manual, and where they are important characters as far as telling you the story or telling you about the setting. They aren't exactly, we are the only people that can actually change the way the story goes. We left that to the players. We wanted the galaxy to be completely open, and we wanted, especially with the organized play, for the decisions that the players make to change the way the galaxy develops as the game.
So that means, does that mean you guys kind of left out like the higher up NPCs, and they're like, it's up to the game master to come up with
no. We have a what's called the Sword of Accord, which is kind of like an agreement between worlds that guard and harness power out of the Crucibles. Each of the major races has a representative from those, and those would qualify as major NPCs for that region. We do also have obviously the head of the military. We do have an emperor of the Lorendi Imperium. There are a group of people that run the Shadow Technocracy. All of these NPCs do exist. I just can't really tell you about them because these are all story surprises. We wanted to create a whole theme of discovery. When you play the adventures, then you learn about all these characters that you deal with, and when you do that, the decisions that you make when dealing with these characters affects what happens to these characters, or what happens going forward. We set up the faction system for organized play, for example, to where you have the factions kind of like Adventurers League, but there are also outside factions that are dealing with yours, and how you deal with them depends on how you deal with them next time.
Brian Smith is working hard in the chat trying to get you to reveal some. Alpe says, sounds sort of like how a TV series reveals things. It's, you want to tell the story with them and let it flow out as you go.
Yeah, I'd rather do it that way to not. I don't want to ramp up expectations, and at the same time, I want to create excitement. Ooh, what's going to happen next? Ooh, who am I going to meet? Who's this person? How do they fit into the story?
So how many factions do you have?
There are 5 player factions.
Okay.
We have about a dozen major total.
And what are the 5 player factions?
All right, so the 5 player factions. One is the. Sorry, actually, let me get the. I'm not doing this. Not doing this completely by.
It's all right. This happens all the time. And actually, just because I've talked to so many creators, it's not a big deal when you don't remember them off the top of your head, because you probably created a bunch of them, and some of them get nixed and some of them get changed. And it's not a problem to name them all, but to actually give you specific detail, I'm like because they had to sort of work and deal with each other. So one aspect of one to deal with the other. To go in order. Okay, one is the Aetheron. They are sort of
I guess like a galactic CIA in a sense. You know, they're all about control of information and keeping it out of the wrong hands, and you know, sort of control from within the shadows against others from within the shadows. That's sort of their deal.
Spies.
The children of Arya are they actually believe that there's like an outside intelligence out there that is powering the Crucibles, and that higher power sort of created the Espers and gave them like the purpose to defend the universe against something that's coming. But,
sounds a little bit like Religion and God to me.
Yeah, yep. That they're about the closest that you can get to religion and gods and zealots that are player based. The Infinity Order is a military organization, and they are, you know, peace and prosperity through, you know, whatever we can provide as far as military assistance. So they're mostly based tactical war strategy, ship strategy, that kind of thing. They're more guards than anything else. The Shadow Cipher is very similar to the Shadow Technocracy, but not in the vein of being completely insane. The Shadow Cipher, they're organized groups that believe that the best way to keep the galaxy safe is to expand their own power and control through technology and influence. So you'll see a lot of them as, you know, presidents of certain, you know, computer corporations and and things like that. And then you have the Vashahar. The Vashahar are sort of like the Children of Arya, but instead of leaning towards that concept of a higher power, the Vashahar believe that the galaxy itself is an entity, like a character, if you will, and that they are part of it, sort of like cells within a creature, and that, you know, all life within needs to be protected and kept in a balance.
Some Taoists going on there.
Yeah. There you go.
Or Taoism, I guess it would be.
Yeah, Taoism.
Nice. So, you know, one of the points that are brought up in chat's a pretty good one by Brian is I have yet to play a sci-fi tabletop role-playing game. I always feel lost. And, you know, I've talked to people about this a lot of times, and they ask, like, how do I write for a sci-fi game, you know, when it's so expansive, there's so much going on. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah. I thought the same thing when I was first putting together Esper Genesis, and one of the game designers that I was talking to, actually two of the game designers, one was Ken Banks, one was Kenneth Height, and you know, they were both looking at this stuff, and they were like, look, you know, the game is the game. That's the purpose of the game. So take the setting and just crank it up. Just dial it up to 11. You know, just take like the core of what you want your sci-fi to represent, and just build off of that, and everything else will take care of itself. Sci-fi has so many different types of genres that collaborate into one genre. So yeah, my tip is, you know, find the form of science fiction that you like, and just, you know, piecemeal others out of it into it, and it'll build its own thing. That's kind of how it worked with us.
Yeah, you know, I totally agree. Like, one is whether you're playing D&D, you know, with Esper Genesis or just regular, or playing any kind of tabletop game, you kind of have to decide what kind of game you want to play in, and what kind of game you want to run in. Once you have that, you can kind of work things out from there. Yep. You know, if you have a bunch of people flying around the galaxy in a spaceship, well, if they come across a derelict space station or another ship, it really is just a dungeon, right? If you want to boil it down and distill it down, well, now you just have to decide what's in that dungeon. You know, right. Why is that dungeon there? Who put that dungeon there? You know, the questions are all kind of the same, you know, once you do that.
And then, you know, once you get in that dungeon, you know, when you have the setting established, and you know who the players are, you know who the races are, you know kind of what the technology level is, then you decide: is it a rescue mission? Is it survival horror? Is it a lot of things can happen in that space station.
Yeah, and the other thing too is I think people just focus on like because there's so many places the players can go, but it's kind of the same in D&D, and as the GM, you always have tools that you can kind of use to kind of guide them in a direction that you want to go, or you can just go with whatever it is they're doing, and make it up as you go.
Absolutely, and the best part about sci-fi is actually that's another tip I can give you. Sci-fi is open-ended genre. Compared to fantasy. When fantasy goes like off the rails, then it's magic. But sci-fi, you could throw in whatever you want. You don't even need to use magic. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, we're in this sci-fi realm right now, and I just want to throw in this thing out of left field from some other sci-fi, and about 99% of the time it'll work.
Right, it could just be science they haven't heard of, or it could literally be magic, right? Because it's so vast, the game is so vast. You can always bring it back and throw things like that in there.
Exactly.
So, do you have any like Q like entities in there?
Not really. There are some really powerful espers that are able to do things like move and shape time. So I guess they would qualify as Q-like entities. Is there a Q consortium or something like that? No, not yet anyway.
I was thinking more along the lines of like cosmic, I guess cosmic trickster type. I mean, it's kind of a common trope that comes up from time to time in different genres. Comic books are riddled with them.
Yeah, that's true. No, I can't. I mean, I can't say that there wouldn't be or there won't be. Currently, right now, there is not, because it just kind of it doesn't fit the vein of the story as it's going. I will say this, and I promised the rest of my team to keep quiet about it, is that Esper Genesis does have an overall meta plot. There is a whole thing of what's going on in the galaxy. There is something happening as far as the Crucibles are concerned, and we kind of want that mystery to flower when the time's right.
Is there a defined number of Crucibles?
No.
Because I feel like that's a really interesting plot point, and some like one of the tropes that I really enjoy is the jumped up nobody or jumped up loser, and I see that I could definitely do that with one of these Crucibles.
Yeah, you can have Crucibles. I mean, if the DM wants, they can say, hey, you know what? There's a Crucible here, and it just activated. They're dormant Crucibles and they're active Crucibles. There are only a certain number of known active ones that are on the galaxy map that are in the core manual, and actually that's kind of how time is measured. Also, is so the Silrain arc, which is the setting, is an arc of Crucibles, like a travel route, and that's kind of where we're basing most of our story in the galaxy, and we're letting game masters just branch out to everywhere else in the galaxy and do what they want, because we want both of those things to be available as well. But every so often, all of the Crucibles in that arc all resonate with each other, and they all pulse with a certain color. And that's what's called an arc bind, and that's basically what is measured as like a year. In a sense, in the galaxy, since time measures differently depending on where you are.
So, do the Crucibles come in different flavors?
They do. Some of them look completely different than others. There's no rhyme or reason as to what or why, or none that's known yet.
So I imagine you could do a lot of adventures around the Crucibles themselves. Crucibles awakening with dark energy or awakening for no reason. Like that sounds like an adventure all itself. Like that you would send someone on. Hey, this Crucible just awakened. Go check it out.
Yeah, which could lead to many forms of different types of danger. You know, for example, just using the Eldori race as an example, their Crucible was their moon, and they didn't know it. And when it activated, it completely devastated, all or transformed, I should say, their entire biosystem on their planet, including their own people. So,
are they like artifacts or space stations, or are they sentient?
All of them do have a. All I can say is all of them do have a surface. All of them do have an interior. All of them have a core where the energy is harnessed out of. The energy that's called sorium is harnessed out of. So I guess in effect they could qualify as a planet and a space station. So,
or a Unicron. What was your inspiration for the Crucibles? Because it seems like this is a big part of the Esper Genesis setting world.
It is inspiration, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really sure. I was writing my own sci-fi story and role-playing game, and like I told you, when I was writing, when we were coming up with Esper Genesis, I had written like a gear and armor list for 5e, and on the side I was actually doing something completely different. It was a role-playing game called Crucible, and that was the story that I came up with. Not really sure what inspired it. I guess a whole bunch of different forms of sci-fi inspired it, but the setting itself, once we kind of combined the ideas and created Esper Genesis, was a lot of Phantasy Star, it was a lot of Mass Effect, it was a lot of Star Wars. So I just kind of like, and I know those are very like broad broad genres that I just kind of took and mashed together. Phantasy Star is just an old time Sega gamers, thing, which I am, and it had like a lot of different sort of it had a lot of different aspects of that little galaxy that I really liked. That gave me like that whole feeling of like sci-fi and adventure and mystery that I was able to carry over and combine with really cool tech stuff, like stuff out of Mass Effect, which that had like psionics and all different types of cool tech. And Star Wars is just Star Wars. If you're not a Star Wars fan, then you either are or you're not.
You either are or you're wrong. No. So with Esper Genesis, what kind of stories do you like to tell at the table?
I enjoy telling, and this is actually not even just Esper Genesis. Whenever I write adventures, I like to write adventures to where the characters are, the characters want to feel like they're actually doing something important. To where, I'm not prone to writing those like, hey, get this microchip and deliver it to this guy and get some money adventures. That's not me. That's there has to be something developing. There has to be something happening. I like NPCs, and I like NPCs that actually mean something to what's going on. So I'm not sure if that's the question you were asking me, but sorry for figuring out it.
That yeah, I mean it does, like, so you like to. You like to spotlight and highlight the adventuring party is what it sounds like to me. Instead of, retrieve this microchip and bring it back to this person who's then going to do the cool thing with it.
Exactly.
It's like, take this microchip, infiltrate this facility, plug it into their computer.
Right. And then once you plug it into their computer, you have a choice of, whether or not you want to take this cool information for yourself and do something with it, or you actually want to finish the task as is, which might open up something completely different because you found out that this NPC that you're helping is not who they say they are, or
So James Leslie asked the question: could the Crucible potentially be a creature?
No comment.
No comment. I told you they're Unicron. I know it. They're all Unicron, a combination of Unicron, Death Star, and Borg cubes. That's my hypothesis. So, what has been the most rewarding thing working on these 3 books for you?
I've learned a lot about developing a game. There's a difference between being a freelance writer, like work with Adventurers League and work with guys to develop adventures and stuff, and actually putting out something that's going to go out, putting out something new, presenting it to people, and marketing it, talking to people. That there's a certain aspect of that whole industry that I was not familiar with. So I mean that was a very good learning experience for me. As far as working on the setting itself, I mean that's just gravy. That's just fun. As far as we come up with so many different ideas, and they either go in or they go out. And if they go in, then it's kind of like, okay, let's come up with a way that it works with everything else. We just make it work. As far as that, let's see what else. Working with the artists. So I didn't get to mention the great artists that we have. We have art from Tanho Sim. Our primary artist is Santi Casas, who is absolutely amazing. And one of the coolest things that you can get is when you describe something that you made up, and then it comes back to you in this fantastic piece of art that you're like, wow, this looks even cooler than I thought it would.
You definitely have some really great art pieces when it comes to Esper Genesis. So I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I like the like the cover, for example, the cover of the core manual. Originally, we were just like, I sort of set up a scenario and said, we're gonna make that like a piece of interior art. We weren't even kind of like conceptualizing the covers yet. And Sandy sent back that piece, and we were looking at it going, huh. That's cooler than anything that I thought of so far. So we're gonna use that for a cover.
I've recently just started dabbling into art directing, and it's tough. And it's tough directing people and what to do, or being like sending it back on. I need you to change this or change that, or can you do this better?
Yeah, what we've been trying to do. What makes it nice for us is that it's a brand new setting, so we leave a lot of wiggle room. We try and find we try and find really good artists that can work with us and at the same time are just as excited about what they're doing. So sometimes they send us stuff that we describe to them with aspects that we've never even thought of. And it's kind of like, oh, you know what? We can work with that. That's really cool. So we do end up sending back things a lot less. There are certain things that obviously have to be changed, in regards to rules and things like that. But if they send us back something and we really like it, then it's who else has seen this before? No one. So it's kind of fun. It's almost like discovering your own stuff. So it's pretty cool.
I have to agree with that part. Absolutely. Remtruck says wants to know the full release, does it go up to level 20? I guess they're looking at the basic rules. It goes up to level 10.
The full release goes up to level 20. It has all of the it has a lot of the setting information there. It has all 9 player races, all 8 character classes. Has expanded gear, expanded starship rules. All of that stuff is in the core manual. It's a full-fledged tier 1 through 4 5e game system.
So the core manual that's coming out. That's done. You know,
it's out. Yeah, it's out in virtual RPG now, but it's just we're just getting the print copies that are coming at Origins, and then once we have that and we send them out to the Kickstarter backers, then a few months later they'll be available for general distribution at your local gaming store.
And then you've got the next 2 books that you guys are working on.
Yep.
How far out have you planned things?
We have we've obviously planned the first 3 books. We have all those set up to put together. We just have to get the work done, which is going pretty well. I sent the rest of the guys like a whole bunch of threat pieces that all look awesome. That I guess I'll kind of share in previews on the website eventually. We also want to do an adventure path, I guess is the common term for it. So we're doing Crucible Core first. We're kind of doing it in reverse of I guess what D&D does normally. D&D will come out with like a big hardcover template adventure and then like the organized play adventures from there. What we're doing with our organized play is we're getting players together to run through some of those storylines, and then the decisions that they make in those storylines are going to define what is in the adventure path that we put out, like the major adventure path that we put out for everybody to play.
I'm always curious when I talk to different game designers because there seems to be like one of 2 camps, right? You're either of the camp where you're going to make a thing and like that's your hill where you're going to live and die on and you're just going to stay there. Or there's other game designers in the camp of like they make a thing, it's like fire and forget, and they're on to the next thing, and they just like to make a lot of different games, and like not one isn't right or wrong. They're just different ways of doing it, different preferences.
Yeah, I know. I guess I qualify as being in the middle. I still have I'm still writing stuff for the Guild Adepts. I have an adventure that I kind of had on delay for a long time because I had so many deadlines on top of me that I'm still writing for. But so I'm trying not to get a hold of too much. But we are sticking with Esper Genesis. It's going to keep developing. We're not going to leave it behind. At the same time, I also have like a 5e setting, that I already wrote like a small adventure for called Demon Bane Chronicles, and that is something I'd like to get back into developing at that point in time. Brian has his setting that I guess I should probably keep quiet about because I don't want to really mention it without his permission that he's doing. But we also have Eric. Eric, in addition to our producer, he is also the writer for the Witch Hunter: The Invisible World RPG, and that's been out for years now under Paradox Concepts, and it's now under us, and he's planning on developing new things for that game.
Hey, don't worry about letting the cat out of the bag about anything. It's just me, you, and the internet here.
Oh yeah,
nobody else.
nobody believes what they hear on the internet anyway.
Yeah. Do you have any desire to work on any non-5e properties?
Yes. Actually, I do. Actually, I have. Let me rephrase that. I have done some work on another system that's actually coming out very soon. It is sci-fi based. That's all I can say about it because as far as I know, it hasn't been officially announced yet. But it does not use 5e remotely at all. It uses another universal system. That's about as much as I can say about it. But yeah, when I was young, D&D wasn't my only game. I played Shadowrun almost religiously, about as much as D&D, and I also enjoyed playing Rifts and GURPS and what else? Cyberpunk. There are a lot of game systems that I would totally love to dive into. It's just I'm very busy right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you also have a day job too, I believe. So
Yep.
there's that as well. There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, only so much you can push to get done.
So we are coming up on the hour mark. What do you want to leave people with before we head on out of here?
If you want to take a look at more about the game, or sign up for any of the Origins events coming up, or just ask me any questions at all, you can go to espergenesis.com. That is the game's official website. From there, we have a Facebook group, we have a Google Plus group. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Skydawn1, and number one. And let's see. Well, we also have a live stream. We have once every few weeks. Just bring up Esper Genesis Twitch in Google, and it'll come up for you. We have some amazing players that are playing through some of the Crucible core adventures right now, and it's pretty awesome to see that in effect. We will have the hardcover book on sale at Origins. We will be at the Studio 2 publishing booth. Come by and say hi if you want. I will gladly, sign any books that you pick up if I'm there. Most likely I'll be there. Otherwise, I'll be at a table running an adventure. But that's about it. That's all I've got.
So James Leslie says the book is well worth the value. I picked it up from Drive-Thru, and as always, in the description, you can find a bunch of links to go track Rich down and check out Esper Genesis. I want to thank you for coming on, Rich. Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us in the chat today. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me on.